Welcome back to the Sprinklr Coffee Club. Thanks so much for joining us. We're really excited to have another conversation about customer experience, digital transformation, modern channels of communication, and so much more. I'm Marshall Kirkpatrick, your host here at the Sprinklr Coffee Club, and I have with me today a very special guest, one of the smartest, most knowledgeable, most dynamic people I've ever had the benefit of working with, Mr. Grad Conn, Chief Experience Officer here at Sprinklr. Grad, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Marshall. That's nice. That's uncalled for, but appreciated. Thank you.
You bet. Have you got some coffee to drink here on the Coffee
I
Club,
do.
Grad?
A fine Keurig McCafe, McDonald's McCafe, which actually is excellent coffee, but it's the decaf. So I'm going decaf McDonald's McCafe, which many purists would potentially call not coffee, but I find it delicious. And then I have my, I don't know if you can see this, but this is my special edition Starbucks Magic Kingdom coffee mug. So this is from Walt Disney World, and I got this on a trip with my daughter, and it's a wonderfully large 10-ounce mug that holds a bunch of coffee of any kind, not just Starbucks coffee, which is also, by the way, excellent coffee as well, but not at hand today.
That's fantastic. Well, Grad, you have brought such a wide range of different coffees, from the exotic to the
Mundane.
yes, right to our attention here on the show. That's fantastic. I am drinking a Trader Joe's special. If you've had the big medium roast in the blue can, I went out and bought 3 cans of it this week, which will prevent me from having to leave my house and go to Trader Joe's for another 3 months.
Wow. Okay.
So, and drinking out of a mug from the Shins, one of my favorite bands.
It's interesting. The logo looks like the logo from the Sunday morning show on CBS.
It does, doesn't it?
CBS This Morning. It's got that sun logo. That's the same kind of feel to it. I love that. It's got a very mid-century modern feel to it. But anyway,
I've always enjoyed that as well. Speaking of mid-century modern, is that what you've got going on that T-shirt there?
No, just kind of
earlier.
I'm kind of representing the Bronx Zoo today. But this has got the sort of kind of classic Helvetica sort of lettering and the classic New York subway system sort of look and feel. There's actually a great book on how the New York subway system graphics were done and the entire system behind it. And it was a very revolutionary system at the time. They didn't go quite as far as they wanted to. The original designers had other things in mind in terms of branding the subway and creating the wayfinding and making it even easier. They didn't quite get it fully implemented, but it's in that book. And then there was a really great exhibit on the New York City subway system graphics and design at the Museum of Modern Art, probably about a year and a half to 2 years ago that I saw. It was terrific. And it's a great example. There's actually also, just while we're on the topic, is an amazing movie called Helvetica. And the movie is about the founding of that font. And it's far more exciting than you might think. It's an excellent film.
That's a good prompt to check it out. Well, I know that you are a man who appreciates craftsmanship and communication, and I'm excited to hear your thoughts on some of the subjects that we both have had on our minds lately. I have been reading your excellent blog, Copernican Shift, for as long as we've known each other, but there have been a few especially interesting posts that you have put up recently that I think prompt and warrant some further discussion. And I appreciate this opportunity to dive into some of it with you. You ready?
I'm always ready.
That's the spirit. That's fantastic.
Born ready.
Awesome. Yes. So here, Grad, at the Sprinklr Coffee Club, which was your idea in the first place. Thank you very much. We primarily operate from an influencer relations kind of perspective, but you may recall that a few years ago, you put me in charge of analyst relations here at Sprinklr as well. And the combination...
Excellent job.
No, thank you. It's a real good combination, but I want to try something different and new today, bringing those two areas of responsibility together and see what kind of magic we can create by asking you, such an inspiring thought leader on these kinds of topics, to reflect on some of the things that we are reading from the world's leading research analyst firms regarding the topics that are so important to our customers, and see how they play out in your experience. See if you've got a different perspective. See if you can extend on or critique the analysts' perspectives. And I want to start with the blog post that you put up recently, advocating for this, that digital transformation be led by the CMO. You wrote a real good blog post making that case, and it is an unorthodox way of going about digital transformation. I think, at least according to Forrester research, they found back in 2019 that only 16% of CMOs are currently responsible for digital transformation. So why is it that you think that should change?
That's a great question. And I actually have, I think, a reasonably thoughtful answer. This really focuses on who's in charge of the customer. And when you're making digital transformation happen, are you making it happen around processes? Are you making it happen around systems? Or are you making it happen around the customer? Right. So let's kind of cover that and sort of pull that apart a little bit and see if it makes sense. But before we do that, do you know why I thought it would be fun to call this coffee club?
No, I don't recall.
Did I never tell you the origin of coffee club?
No, no. Let me take a sip, and then you can tell me.
Yeah, it's nothing scandalous. It's quite sweet actually. So one of my favorite memories as a parent, as a father, was my oldest daughter Myrna, who is now in her mid-20s. She was quite a bit younger, sort of very young teen. We're in Toronto, so this will be sort of about 2004-ish. So maybe she's 10, 11 years old. And the Lord of the Rings trilogy was in the midst of being produced. I don't know if you're a big Lord of the Rings fan, but I'm a pretty big Lord of the Rings fan, not surprisingly to most people. And so we had missed the first two in the theater because she was too young. And I think she would have been 7, or think when the first one came out, and maybe 9. But for an 11-year-old, the third one would have been good to see. And she wanted to see it in the theater. But she hadn't seen the first two. And so we started this little tiny tradition of getting up really early, like 5:30 in the morning, and then we would make coffee. And I drink decaf, so it was like not a big deal. So I'd make a cup for her, make a cup for me, and then we would sit down and we'd watch some portion of Lord of the Rings. And by the time we kind of got watching it, it'd be like 6 o'clock, and we'd see like a half an hour, and then she had to start getting ready for school because she started pretty early at school, and then so every day we kind of peel off a little bit of it, and over the course of a couple of weeks, we watched the first two. And then we went to go see the third one in the theater, and it was an amazing experience for her because the first two were fresh in her mind, and that's kind of the only thing she'd been watching, and she'd been watching it every single morning, and it had been this and so she had this incredible, amazing theatrical experience, which was just, as a parent, it's hard to land that kind of stuff because things are always so crazy. And we called our little morning sessions coffee club.
Oh,
So coffee club for me has always been a very warm emotional connection in my life. And we did do other coffee clubs again after that, like for other things. And we would do things like that. And I did it with my younger daughter and stuff like that. So coffee club became early mornings with daddy, usually like watching something or doing a show or something like that at Christmas time. We'd watch specials and stuff like that. And so obviously we don't do it anymore because, they're grown up, they live outside the home, and it's just, we're not, they're not in their teens anymore, but just still wanted to have come coffee club in my life. And so when you were like, hey, I should start a weekly show, and I'm like, great idea, Marshall. And I thought, call it coffee club. And there we go. Coffee club lives on. So that is the origin of coffee club.
oh, Grad, that's beautiful.
Thought
What
so. Yeah, yeah.
what an honor to be bestowed that name here on the show. That's
Anyway, so let's get back to digital transformation. So digital. So I think that the Forrester stuff, I think is, I don't think, I know is accurate. I know that number's accurate. It's also a few years ago though. And so if you think about, the article that you're referring to, it's the most recent piece on my post, my blog. And it's basically the intro. It's a slightly revised version of the intro I've written to the upcoming Forbes top 50 most influential CMO study. And there's some other stuff obviously that's in there that refers to the study itself, which I took out of the post I put on the blog. But the essence of the intro that I write in the study is what I put up. And I do think the world's changed pretty significantly, not just the last 6 months, which honestly I'm getting really tired of people telling me about. And by the way, if you're listening out there, SDRs trying to sell me something, could you please not ask me how my family's doing in these challenging times? And first of all, I'm not going to tell you how we're doing. We're doing fine, but I'm not going to tell you that. And number two, don't tell me that these are challenging times. I don't want to hear it. Everybody knows, except for maybe there's probably someone who doesn't know, but most people know. Don't keep rehashing stuff that's old. It's tiring and makes me feel frustrated. Anyway, coming back to this, I do think that what's happened is that over the last couple of years, digital transformation has moved from something that was really about becoming more digital. I'm going to give you an actual example in a second from my days at Microsoft, to actually thinking about how to deliver experiences that cause customers to become more loyal, to buy more, or to become customers in the first place. And so going back not very many years, 2007, 2008, I was at Microsoft, and I had been in Microsoft research. Actually, this is actually even later than that. So I started Microsoft research in 2006. And in Microsoft research, we were extremely digital, right? Eric Horvitz has a robot as his assistant, like literally an actual physical robot, answers questions and tells you what his schedule is and stuff. And that's been going on for years. We were using Communicator, which was the preceder to Skype for Business, which is now what Teams is. And so we were very digital in Microsoft research. And then I moved into the US subsidiary in 2011. And they were still printing everything out on these large sheets of paper. And I had literally not used a piece of paper in so many years. And I had not had a phone on my desk. I've been using my computer as my phone for years at this point. I didn't even know how to I didn't know what to do with the paper. Like it just started piling up on my desk because I didn't know I'd forgotten how to file and I'd forgotten what to do. It was just like this alien invasion of like this virus that sort of started spreading over everything. And so that's 2011. It's like yesterday. And so 2012, 13, somewhere in that zone, Steve Ballmer's like, we're going to go digital. We're going to digitally transform the company. And at that time, what he meant was we're going to stop using paper. And so our budget sessions and our mid-year reviews and the strategy sessions and all the things that there's a very strong rhythm at Microsoft that we would go through, it became paperless. And we would, use our phones or we would use our computers to access it. And then there was a fairly steep learning curve. And also many of the products at Microsoft were adapting quickly. Like OneNote had started to become very, very, very useful product, but was still working. And the Surface touchscreens were just coming in. Like there's a bunch of stuff all happening at the same time. There's a lot of innovation. It was very messy and very exciting and very fun. And I remember my boss, Allison Watson, who is genius and an amazing manager, one of the greatest people I've ever worked for. She had been very comfortable in the paper world. But what's great about Allison is that she could get behind anything, and she's like, all right. And like, it was either overnight or over a week. We went from paper to no paper, and just off we went. And then Allison got one of the very, very large Surface hubs in her office. There are these, I think, there's 100 or 120 inch one, and there's like an 80 inch one, and she had the really big one. And you could stand in front of it, and you could draw on it, and you could do back and forth communications and all sorts of stuff. It's a pretty incredible device. But she was like one of the very first people with one of those, and she just dove headfirst right in. And that's what digital transformation meant these 5 or 6 years ago. So that Forrester study, 2016, that is just, I'm sure the CIO was probably driving a lot of the digital transformation because many companies are still very much paper-based. And even up until a few months ago, many companies still required wet signatures, which is, a signature on ink on paper. And now suddenly everyone has discovered, the Adobe product, I think, is like the dominant player now. I think Microsoft has endorsed the Adobe product, and there are other players out there as well. But everyone's got digital signing as kind of part of what they do. And so digital signing was part of what it meant to be digitally transformed, right? So that's why I think that Forrester stat's accurate, but it also is a reflection of the time. I'm trying to write in maybe a slightly more. I'll admit that I might be a couple of years ahead, or maybe a year ahead. I feel comfortable saying that. I don't think I'm 5 years ahead on this. But what's happened now is that we're kind of really not talking about whether it's a good idea to use computers or not anymore. I think we're mostly through that stage. Okay. I think that what we're talking about is our customers will buy from us online. Their propensity to buy or desire to buy will be driven by the experience of the buying journey. We need to compete based on that, and there are many good and bad versions of that out there. And so what digital transformation now means is, how do we as a company make sure that we're delivering an experience to the customer that makes them want to stay a customer or be a customer, or be a more valuable customer. And if you think about how Amazon works, like Amazon's doing two things sort of shockingly well, right? One is they've got this very, very powerful engine to deliver recommendations or deliver the desire you have. And I don't know how many of us have said, oh, purple scissors, and then type it into Amazon. They deliver purple scissors so quickly, and they deliver the perfect purple scissor fast enough that you just go boom, boom, boom. You've ordered it, and you're like, what happened? I just ordered that, and then boom, it's there the next day. And that's the second thing they're doing well, which is Amazon, in most respects, is really a logistics company, and they're amazing at logistics, because there's also something about, I order the purple scissor, I want the purple scissor, I go to buy the purple scissor, and it says it'll be delivered in 2 weeks. Do I really need purple scissors? Maybe I'll just go to the store. Maybe, and then you move on. But if it's going to be delivered like today, or tomorrow, it's like, that's probably faster than I could get to the store. And that keeps creating that connection. And so as companies think about becoming amazing at logistics and amazing at selection, there's a lot of work to be done there. And so the digital transformation that has to occur is around the customer. Okay, so who knows the customer best? Who tends to own that customer relationship? Well, in almost every company, that's the CMO. So it feels not super crazy to me that the CMO is going to be someone who's going to be taking on that mantle of digital leadership and helping drive it against a better customer experience, but also what company systems need to support it. We've had our own experience at Sprinklr. Right? I came on board at Sprinklr. We weren't using Sprinklr. Right? Now, there's a whole bunch of issues when that happens. One is we don't get the benefits of an amazing product, which we get for free. Right? So that'd be a big one. Number two, it's super hard to tell the story of your product when you don't use it. That's just harder. Number three, your product's not going to be as good as it could be if you're banging on your own product every day. I saw this at Microsoft. There's no question that OneNote got a lot better when the whole company started using OneNote for doing budget presentations. These are like high stakes presentations to Bill and Steve, and like OneNote had to work, and it had to work well. And if it didn't work well, the OneNote team heard about it. And they heard about it with, an angry, red-faced, fist-shaking Microsoftie standing in their door, shaking from an experience they just had, and that had impact, right? So those things for me, you have to. So when I came in as CMO, I was like, wow, this is kind of interesting. We're not using our own product, and so we rapidly shut down everything else. moved on to Sprinklr. Immediately, everything got better. When our care team moved on, they immediately saw shocking improvements in their numbers and their indices. We were all suddenly in the same system. It was great. We suddenly had much better asset management. We could suddenly do social marketing. Everything got better that way. There's no question we got a lot smarter about the product, so we could talk about it in better ways. And there's no question the product got better because I know we submitted hundreds and hundreds of tickets. And we had an inside track on getting those things fixed. And now we're well on our way to having a full top to bottom, end to end marketing product that could be the only thing you use in marketing. That wouldn't have happened if we weren't using it. And so that's an example of digital transformation. Other people in the company could have done it, but it happened to happen at the CMO level because I own the customer relationship, and the customer relationship was driving a need and desire to have that.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what Forrester recommends to CMOs that aspire to drive digital transformation: is first, to transform your own marketing, and second, to drive customer obsession throughout the entire enterprise.
It's and I do think this idea of some people call it eating your own dog food. We call it drinking your own champagne. I'm sure there's many others out there, but the idea of living your own product and living your own truth is far more compelling than many people realize. And I think one of the things that was disconcerting to me when I first got to Sprinklr was people weren't doing social marketing. Right, they were buying lists and they were doing programmatic display, and it was like, and they, well, it hadn't really done what we expected it to do, and so there's this kind of like, let's move on. And like, no, we can't do that. I mean, we have to be the world's best social marketer, and we're gonna have to learn our way to it. And I think we're pretty close to that now. I mean, if you think about what we're doing today, I mean, if you look at just what we're doing with the community and what we're doing with advocacy, like what we get out of our advocacy product, we've got more than 60% of our employees now posting 3.5 times a week. Like, imagine if you were a large company and you got that going, like that alone is worth millions of dollars in advertising. And so we've figured out a lot of these things that we were not focused on before. And now we can go to market and we can sort of talk in a way which is with authority. We can talk about how we have been able to do these things that are powered by our product and really, really work. And you can do it too. And here's the proof. And I think that again, transformation can't occur, I think, if you're a hypocrite, right? So I think it's hard to tell someone they need to change the way they're doing things if you haven't changed the way you're doing things.
Mm-hmm.
People smell hypocrisy very quickly, and it's concerning to them, right? And you've got to go in there and you've got to live it. There's a great story from Salesforce where in the early days, some of the sellers were going in and showing senior management their sales on an Excel spreadsheet. And then the management's like, what are you doing showing me this on an Excel spreadsheet? Like, we run Salesforce. So even at Salesforce, right? And so then there was a mandate, you can only show me your sales figures in Salesforce. Well, I can't show you this. I can't show you that. It doesn't work for this. It doesn't work for that. Well, then get it fixed. Get it fixed, right? Or Oracle's another one. They're amazing at this. Oracle's like, they have products that aren't even finished yet, and they force everyone to start using them, right? And they go through it. And again, like this idea that getting everyone who cares the most about the product to use it. There's a last one of these. Sorry, I'm just kind of on a tear here because this is such a constant theme in business. So Alan Mulally, who is the CEO of Ford, and he led the 777 project at Boeing, is kind of this legendary manager and incredible figure. There's a great book called American Icon, which if you haven't read American Icon, you got to read it. It's one of the greatest business books ever written. And there's this great story of Alan Mulally on his very first day at Ford walking. He parks his car. He was driving a Ford Fusion or whatever. Parks his Ford Fusion in the executive parking lot at the Ford building. And he's got his sort of almost written a bit like a diary. And so his observations as he's driving up to the building was the main Ford building did not have the Ford logo on it. He thought, it's interesting. Doesn't have the Ford logo on the Ford building. I'm used to. They took it down, right? And so then he gets in the executive parking lot, noting that there's an executive parking lot. believe in those either. We certainly didn't have executive parking lots at Microsoft, but gets in the executive parking lot, kind of looks around, and he notices that none of the cars in the executive parking lot are Fords. Sometimes they're companies that Ford may have an interest in. Like I think they had a partial interest in Jaguar. There's like that kind of thing, but none of them are Fords. So Alan goes to the very first meeting and he's like, I'll be really disappointed if I come in the parking lot next week and everyone's still driving all these foreign cars. And sure enough, everyone managed to figure out how to buy a Ford the following week. And the next thing he did is he put the Ford logo back on the building. Like, like you gotta like, and people are like, oh, well, that's like old fashioned and it's in the blue oval. And he's like, well, that's what it is. I mean, you gotta own the thing you own. That's just the thing it is. And like, yeah, we're never going to have the logo that, Ferrari has. Okay. Because that's Ferrari's logo. We have the Ford logo, but you know what? We're going to make it big on our cars. We're going to make it big on our building. We're going to be proud of it. And we're going to own it. And that's what we're going to be all about. And if you look at the Ford cars in that time, they didn't have the blue logo on them. They just had like Ford in letters. And then suddenly that logo, that blue oval came back. And it's a very dominant element on Ford cars again. And it's really wonderful, actually. I think it looks really awesome. And it's, again, it's about kind of owning and being part of what you own. And again, the people who think that way, now this is Alan Mulally, who's the CEO, but he's very much a marketing mindset. The people who think that way, who think the way I'm talking, those tend to be CMOs. CMOs think that way. And so that's why I think they have the opportunity to be digital transformation leaders. The other thing I think that happens to the CMO is that it's very hard for the CMO to get their job done alone. Right? So you can do all the greatest marketing in the world. If the product's not working, then that's not going to work. If the salespeople don't know how to sell, that's not going to work. So you're dependent on and you're connected to many other people. And so the marketing leader tends to have a role which crosses a lot of other functions more than, say, the IT function, which can live somewhat in a silo and be very effective. And so I think that the other thing that marketers have going for them, as CMOs have going for them, is that as sort of cross-functional leaders, they can pull a cross-functional project across the line more easily than someone who's in a more siloed profession. And I think that is something CMOs can leverage more.
Grad, I wanted to tell you about the impact of another one of your blog posts on Sprinklr in terms of really owning what you are and drinking your own champagne. One of the posts you put up recently was a reading list of great books about writing. And here's a little something I haven't told you offline. I'll tell you here live. In the 3 months since we've been doing this continuous improvement intervention of daily meetings, applying the lessons from some of that great writing into our own social marketing. According to our Sprinklr dashboard, our growth rate of new followers that we have connected with on social has increased 300%.
Awesome.
Big spike. And that in spite of a silent period that we took at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement. So the quantity of posts were down, but the quality of posts have gone up so much because we really rolled up our sleeves and dug in and applied some of the wisdom from other industries and other sources of knowledge, that it's made a huge impact.
Well, you led that, Marshall. You've done an amazing job of that. And I loved when you started quoting cables back to me, or and contradicting something. I'd say, "Oh, it should be blue," and you're like, "Cable says it should be red," and I'm like, "Oh wow, that was delicious." Those are great moments. I treasure those. That was a really great time.
Yeah, I do too. So, Grad, that's a good example, I think, of how there's always more opportunity to, even when you're fully invested in social marketing, for example, there's room to just up level the game in more and more ways. I wonder, the last thing that I want to ask you about is if you have some advice for companies at different places in the digital transformation journey. We've talked about how this big acceleration in digital transformation has served early adopters really well because they've already got a head start. But now there's a lot of companies that have been slower to get started. They were perhaps more optimized for stability and security over time, that now have a real clear impetus to accelerate their digital transformation. What would you advise for early adopters that are in the lead to build on their digital transformation? And what would you advise for companies that are earlier in the journey, just getting started?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, and the analysts have got good advice here. I'm not sure anyone's really getting down to the brass tacks of execution, because some of the advice is a little bit motherhoody. But focus on execution, for example. It's like, oh, really? But I do think that there is an opportunity for someone who is not really in the fray to leapfrog existing competitors. It's a little bit like South Korea, for example, is extraordinarily connected, partly because they didn't deal with copper infrastructure. They were able to sort of leapfrog right over that, and they went to fiber and cell right away. And you see, like, sometimes your legacy systems create a technology debt that can slow you down. So the first thing I would say to someone who is early in the journey is resist the temptation to say things like, we're going to crawl, walk, and run. My God. That is such it is such a tired way of thinking about things. There's also the phase 1, 2, 3, and there's, like, different stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, that kind of stuff. And it's just a terrible way to think about it. What you have to do is you have to say, what would be an experience that if I were to deliver it to my customer, they would be loyal to me forever. They would tell their friends about me, and they would buy most of my products. Think about it that way. And then just build that. This idea of, like, well, first we're going to put up a website, and then we're going to put a car. Don't do that, because you're never going to make it. What you're actually literally doing is you're literally laying down technology debt before you've even accumulated it. So go to the end point. Just be mobile. Go just to the phone. Think about that payment. Like, there's some amazing Shopify merchants now where I'll see a thing, I click on it, I click on my Shopify link, they've got my profile, it's purchased. It's like 2-3 clicks and the thing is on its way to me. It's amazing. So just, like, you've got to be really smart about that. For people who are existing, I think you should be scared, because you're sitting on top of a pile of numbers and KPIs that you're sort of like living with every day. And all the people who haven't done it yet, which is most of the people, okay, we're at the early part of the curve right now. It doesn't seem that way, but online shopping is only about 10%. Pretty early. Pretty early. It's going to be 100% at one point. So pretty early right now. It's going to look ridiculously early in retrospect. 20 years from now, people are going to say, what was I thinking? Why didn't I buy Amazon then? So at that point in the journey, if you think you've got it all figured out and you're going to have these new competitors zipping ahead without even worrying about laying down all the tracks you've laid down, you get into big trouble. And so what I would do is I would create a second team, which is your we're not bounded by the technology that exists team, and set them out on a journey to build something like they're a startup and they didn't have to worry about any boundaries. And I think it's sort of, this sounds super, I hate saying this because it's becoming so overused, but this, you do have to make sure you've made a significant investment in AI, right? If you're not, because the AI capability is going to be critical, and you got to be really smart about your targeting capabilities. It's been a really interesting experience for me over the last couple of weeks. I just got engaged, right? And boy, without really like a post on Facebook, a well liked, like hundreds of likes, a well liked post, but nonetheless, I'll post on Facebook telling our friends, very limited. Like, it's not like I'm out there buying like, engagement gifts on Amazon or anything like that. So very limited sort of shopping. The amount of targeting I'm getting for she said yes and all this kind of stuff, pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. And that is like, that's the future, right? Which is to know what's going on in someone's life without them having to actually tell you. And so pulling in that targeting, being able to drive the AI, and be able to think about what the offers are going to be and make it really relevant to the user. If you've got 1 million users, think about 1 million experiences and how you're going to deliver that. So that'd be kind of my core advice to those two groups.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's the AI investment in particular is one that I think we see time and time again with customers. I'm thinking of the streaming customer that came to us and said that they had a 4-year target for new customer acquisition. They had been doing targeting in a much more manual sort of way, but they uploaded their data into Sprinklr, applied the AI of the smart ads platform, were able to generate 8,000 variations of advertising automatically to go out and target people based on their appropriate profiles, and they hit their 4-year goal of new customer acquisitions in 6 months.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. And I would say that maybe the reason I'm so hesitant to say AI is I think it's overused because people just put it out of there as a blanket, just, AI. And I think what's better is what you just did, right? Or maybe what I just did, which is like, it's less about AI per se as it is the experience that you want to draw. And so think about, what is the experience that I want to deliver? You're going to need to use AI to deliver that, but it's not AI itself that's of use. It's the experience, that the outcome that you're driving that's going to be critical. And that to me is the key to all this.
Well said. Well said. Thinking of the experience. That's Grad Conn, the Chief Experience Officer here at Sprinklr. Grad, thank you so much for sharing these stories from work and from life. Those are some beautiful stories you shared with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Marshall. That was super fun. I loved it. And I love Coffee Club. Keep going.
Thank you so much. Folks, thanks again for joining us here on Coffee Club. I hope you will like this and subscribe to receive all the episodes of Coffee Club. They're not all as heartwarming as this one, but they are a consistent source of learning and inspiration. So I hope you'll join us for episodes past, present, and future. I always learn a lot and really enjoy doing it. But this has been a special episode. Grad, I hope that the rest of your day goes wonderfully. I thank you for letting me be a part of it. And folks, thanks for letting us be a part of your day. Take care, everybody.
Good afternoon.